Aegon. When he looked east, he saw the past, old, tired, dead. But when he looked west, he saw the future. Gold in the ground, gold in the fields, and no dragons in the sky but his.
Hey, what's up guys, it's Aladdin. In today's video, we're going to be talking about why HBO cancelled one of their Game of Thrones prequel shows which was starring Naomi Watts as lead, as well as them also confirming another prequel show which will be called House of the Dragon. Now this prequel show will essentially go over the Targaryen Civil War, as well as it also being based on George R.R. Martin's book Fire and Blood. But before we get into the video, I just want to let you guys know that I will be doing another $20 gift card giveaway at 10,000 subscribers. All you gotta do to participate is be a subscriber, like the video, and leave a comment discussing anything about the video. Once we hit 10,000 subscribers, I'll pick the winner in whatever most recent video I have out, so good luck to everyone. And lastly, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. It definitely helps out the channel grow and lets others like you stay tuned with the latest shows and movies. And also, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you guys can get notified right away when I drop my next video. Now it's been a good several months since Game of Thrones came to an end in May. The final season for Game of Thrones was just something else, and I know most of you were also not pleased with how it ended due to the showrunners rushing the plot as well as destroying some characters in the process. But don't get me wrong now, Game of Thrones is still my favorite show hands down. However, what the showrunners did in the last two seasons was just not right nor acceptable. Season 7, I'll let that one slide, but season 8, nah, to me that was just a joke. The effects and the cinematography were just breathtaking, but the dialogue was just so bland for season 8 and some of the characters just felt lifeless, for example like Tyrion. However, this video isn't to critique or bash season 8, we'll do that in a whole nother video. Now when season 8 came to an end back in May, it was announced that HBO wanted to produce more Game of Thrones content, which at the time most fans were excited about. However, as time passed by, fans started getting skeptical about it because they didn't want these new shows to end up like Game of Thrones since the final wasn't that well received. But over the course though, news had broken out that a new prequel show was in the makings, which was actually just called Untitled Prequel for the time being. However, Martin kept referring it to The Long Night Prequel. It was going to be focusing on the Age of Heroes, as well as the first ever battle between Man and the White Walker. Now this was actually Jane Goldman's project that she was tasked to do. She managed to film a pilot over the summer, however it seems like HBO just wasn't having it. According to sources, it was said that HBO wasn't thrilled with the final cut of the Watts-led pilot and asked for changes and edits before scrapping the entire thing. I feel like HBO just wasn't really digging that prequel, which might have been the reason for them cutting ties with it. At the same time, I don't think they should have just cut it off like that, and maybe they should have just rather worked on it still and tried finding a way to actually make it work instead of just calling it quits. But also, The Hollywood Reporter also confirmed something else. According to their sources, Goldman had emailed her cast to share the breaking news. But it was also said that HBO hasn't commented or addressed this whole situation yet, which in my opinion is kinda whack. Maybe in the near future, we can hopefully get some sort of closure on this from HBO and maybe in an actual statement regarding this whole thing. The cast for the Untitled Prequel consisted of Naomi Watts, Miranda Richardson, Joshua Whitehouse, Marquise Rodriguez, and more. But going back to the details of the prequel show, we know it was going to take place during the Age of Heroes, which is thousands of years before the events of Game of Thrones. Upon this time in Westeros history, the Seven Kingdoms weren't even a thing to think about. Westeros was actually just separating into dozens of small kingdoms. It was an age which was dominated by heroic figures like Bran the Builder, who was credited for creating the wall, as well as Lan the Cleaver, who was credited for founding House Lannister. Now even though HBO has decided to call quits on the Untitled Prequel, they did announce that they were going to be doing another prequel show which was actually set for an automatic straight to series order, which will have 10 episodes in the first season. The new prequel show is going to be called House of the Dragon. Now it's been said that it will be focusing on House Targaryen and will also be set 300 years before the events of Game of Thrones. Now this new series was co-created by George R.R. Martin as well as Ryan Condal. HBO gave the green light for this prequel on October 29th of 2019 at the end of their HBO Max formal event, which was basically for their investors. Another amazing thing that was announced that day was director Miguel Sapochnik will serve as one of the co-showrunners for House of the Dragon. Sapochnik has directed some of the best, if not the best, episodes in Game of Thrones, like Battle of the Bastards, Hard Home, as well as The Long Night. Sapochnik has a great eye when it comes to detail and storytelling, and that is why he was a huge fan favorite director when it came to directing episodes episodes for Game of Thrones. I'm just really happy that they got Sapochnik to be one of the showrunners for this prequel, and I know for sure that he's not gonna disappoint with his work. Now, the president of HBO, Casey Bloys, also had some comments to share regarding this new prequel. He said, "The Game of Thrones universe is so rich with stories. We look forward to exploring the origins of House Targaryen in the earlier days of Westeros, along with Miguel, Ryan, and George. Me personally, I'm definitely excited for this new prequel, and the fact that we got Martin and Sapochnik together in this is incredible. But also having Sapochnik and Condell as the co-showrunners, I highly doubt this is going to be a flop of any sort." Now, the House of the Dragon is basically based on Martin's 2018 book Fire and Blood, which was essentially the history of House Targaryen that roughly covered 150 years of it. Just like the other prequel, this story does take place long before the events of Game of Thrones. However, not as far back as Jane Goldman's project, since hers was mainly going to explore the age of heroes between Man and the White Walker. But one thing to also take in consideration is that Westeros will look a bit different than it did in Game of Thrones, but not too different, so I wouldn't stress out too much on that now. But the events in this new prequel will eventually lead up to the Dance of the Dragons, which was one massive civil war in the Seven Kingdoms that was held between two rival branches of House Targaryen. But the fact that HBO literally announced a straight-to-series order for 10 episodes for this prequel is insane. I mean, it was known that HBO wanted to explore more of the Game of Thrones universe, which is dope. But at the same time, I do feel like they just wanted another huge cash grab, since Game of Thrones is a huge success that is nearly worth $1 billion when talking about sales and merchandise all around the world. However, I'm not complaining here, just because I really want this new series to become a global success and to do well like Game of Thrones. But with all that said, George R.R. Martin also had some comments to share regarding this whole situation, with the first prequel getting cut off, as well as what he thinks about the new prequel, House of the Dragon. He said on his blog titled Not a Blog, "As exciting as the series order is, I would be remiss if I did not also mention the bad news. HBO also announced that it has decided not to proceed with the other successor show we had in development, the one I kept calling The Long Night. The pilot, for which was shot in Northern Ireland last spring and summer, set thousands of years before either Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, and centered on the Starks and the White Walkers. The untitled pilot was written by Jane Goldman, directed by S.J. Clarkson, and starred Naomi Watts, Miranda Richardson, and a splendid cast. It goes without saying that I was saddened to hear that the show would not be going to series. Jane Goldman is a terrific screenwriter, and I enjoyed brainstorming with her." He continues with, "I do not know why HBO decided not to go to series on this one, but I do not think it had to do with the House of the Dragon. That was never an either-or situation. If television has room enough for multiple CSIs and Chicago shows, well, Westeros and Essos are a lot bigger, with thousands of years of history and enough tales and legends and characters for a dozen shows. Heartbreaking as it is to work for years on a pilot, to pour your blood and sweat and tears into it and have it to come to naught. It's not all uncommon. I've been there myself more than once. I know Jane and her team are feeling the disappointment just now, and they have all my sympathy. With my thanks for all their hard work and my good wishes for whatever they do next." I definitely understand where Martin is coming from, and the fact that he wasn't able to get his first prequel out really does suck. But at the same time, it might have just been bad timing for it, or it wasn't the right thing to do at the moment. Whatever it might be, HBO has decided to provide us with a different prequel, and for that I'm not that upset. However, Martin also spoke about the writing, casting, budget, and the location for this prequel. He said, "Ryan Condell has already done a considerable amount of writing on House of the Dragon, but a lot of work remains ahead of us. There is a writer's room to be assembled, episodes to be broken down and scripted, a cast and crew to be assembled, budgets and production details to be worked out. As yet, we don't even know where we'll be shooting, though I expect we will revisit at least some of the countries David and Dan used for Game of Thrones." He also mentions how he hopes to be involved in this series a lot more like he was in the beginning of Game of Thrones. He said, "To be involved in all of this to some extent, and who knows, if things work out, I may even be able to script a few episodes, as I did for the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones." But he did also mention that before he does even attempt to write any episodes for House of the Dragon, he needs to finish his book Winds of Winter. He said, "But let me make this perfectly clear, I'm not taking on any scripts until I have finished and delivered Winds of Winter. Winter is still coming, and Winds remains my priority, as much as I love to write an episode of House." But that's everything George R.R. Martin had to say regarding both the prequels and his upcoming book Winds of Winter. Now, this is a ton of new information to take in, which is okay, but I am just excited that all of this is coming together and not just talk. But I really want to know how you guys feel about all this. Are you upset about the first prequel being cancelled, or are you okay with it being replaced with House of the Dragon? Do you think this new series will live up to the hype, or will it be a letdown? What are your guys' thoughts on all this so far? Leave all your comments in the comments section and let me know what you guys thought. Now I will be covering the House of Dragon when it airs, along with everything building up to it, like any news, casting, leaks, location, and etc. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss out on anything. But before I go, don't forget about that $20 gift card giveaway that I'll be doing once we hit 10,000 subscribers. All you gotta do to participate is be a subscriber, like the video, and leave a comment discussing anything that you liked about the video. Once we hit 10,000 subscribers, I'll pick the winner in whatever most recent video I have out, so good luck to everyone. I just want to say thank you all for watching, and if you haven't already, hit that like button if you enjoyed today's video, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't by now. Also, hit that notification bell so you guys can get notified right away when I drop my next video. If you don't mind, share the video if you thought it was good and want others to see it. Thank you all once more, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.